everybody, welcome back to my podcast, season 2 of The Good, the Bad, and the Future. I'm here with podcaster and life coach, Rory Mitchell. Today we're going to talk about how he became successful in the social media and podcasting world, and I hope you all had an amazing week. So let's just get straight into it.
Let's do it. Let's go.
So for the people that don't really know you yet, I want you to give a little bit of a bio of like your life and what you're doing right now. So
my life,
of course I said podcaster and life coach, yes, but dig a little bit deeper into that and give a little bio.
Content creator. Started this podcast in 2016.
Okay, that's a bit of a while ago.
Yeah. Mitchell Report Unleashed podcast is the name of the podcast. And life coach started 2020, right in the midst of COVID.
And for your podcast, like what's your overall goal to get with every guest?
Just to captivate inspiring stories, right?
Okay.
So we're doing things about self-development, entrepreneurship, overcoming adversity. You've been on the show, you know how we go, you know how everything was working.
And what do you think like you've, I guess, learned the most through your guests and stuff?
You know what? Just the battle of resiliency and knowing that we all have a story, right? We all have the ability to inspire somebody to become 1% better, right? So like yourself, you know, not to really focus too much on you, but when we think about your podcast, there's a lot of value that you brought, a lot of extreme value, right?
Yeah.
Just a connection piece and things like that.
So you're not trying to get just one thing out of the podcast and one thing to learn. You're more so like what their take on everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I love that. Different perspectives, because you really do learn from just, I am a listener. If someone says something to me, I really listen to it and I'll take from it in whichever way. But I feel like you ask, just being on your podcast and listening to a bunch, you ask very good questions and you dig into them, which is because not a lot of people want or will dig into that, but you're confident in all your questions and answers. So you really do learn.
Confidence got to come from somewhere. You know what I mean?
So what's your like biggest thing, I guess, you've grown from podcasting and stuff? Like how do you think you've changed after just becoming in the eye? Like I know you have almost 12K on Instagram and stuff now, so you have a big audience that listens to it all. Like what do you think is your biggest growing point and stuff from
biggest growing point for me would be just knowing that when I started this, I never knew what it was going to become. So year 1, it was like going through the practice reps. Year 2, practice reps. Year 3, you start seeing some traction starting to build. And then when you go out and people are listening to your show and they're hitting in your DM or they're emailing you, they're like, look, Rory, that show inspired me because of this. So I'll give you an example. I made a post on, it was Facebook a while back, and had something to do about just self-development, building yourself, building your resiliency. And this gentleman reached out to me, anonymous, and was like, listen. This is
before your podcast?
This is during the time. And he was like, Rory, you know, keep me anonymous. Things like that. He goes, interesting. One of the situations that I'm facing was through depression. And he goes, your post triggered me in such a way. But when I read it and I actually did the self-reflection, I wanted to say, hey, listen, thank you, because it helped me get out of his depression state and things like that, right?
Do you remember what the post exactly was or around at all?
Like 2016, 2017.
Okay.
Yeah, 2016, 2017.
And like, what do you think, or do you remember like what the post said, or was it like a quote? It was
something about just like getting out of just facing fear and things like that, right? And you just figured it out, you know, and he's like, hey, listen, thank you. He's like, don't talk about it, but now we're like how many years removed, so I can speak about it now, you know? Yeah. And
I think that I had another life coach on my podcast like months ago now, but he kept on saying the whole thing about trial and error.
Yes.
And he's like, what I learned from it was you have to be comfortable in looking bad in a certain way. Like when I started my podcast, I was scared that people were going to look at it and judge, you know, and it might make me look bad if I said something wrong or whatever. But in reality, from just doing it, it is trial and error. You tried it and I listened to it back and I'm like, I really shouldn't have said that. 100%. I should change this. I should change that. And you grow. So trial and error is such a huge thing. But what would you kind of say is your biggest thing, even in life coaching and stuff, that you've kind of told all of your guests and wanted them to take from it?
Get out of the negativity space when we have had like mind situations, right? So it could be school, could be work, could be relationships, could be anything that we're overcoming. Put your best foot forward. Don't sit in your mess, right? Because if you sit in your mess, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to keep continuously spiraling out of basically saying this spool on the thread. You know what I mean? So what you got to do is you just got to put your best foot forward. Surround yourself with the right energy. Have boundaries. You know what I mean?
So just like try to push through it and take those steps. So what would you kind of recommend? Like,
what would I recommend?
Going out, taking your time off of it, like trying to fill something?
We're focusing on you. So this is what you do. You wake up early in the morning, you go to the gym, you work out. That's number one, right? Yeah. Finding the right books to read. Okay. Right? Get out of negativity spaces. Maybe it's that social media account. Could be like World Star. Could be something that's toxic, right? There's a lot of trauma in this world right now. We need to heal ourselves. For sure. You know what I mean? So eliminate the social media and follow the right people. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yep. Yeah. And let's speak on social media and stuff. Obviously, you have, like I said, almost 12K now. Like, what do you think, or what's even your perspective on social media and using Instagram and stuff? Like, obviously, everyone needs a break here and there. How do you gauge it? Because you post constantly. Like, do you hold yourself accountable for like this many posts a week? Absolutely. And like, what's your routine with that?
So the podcast always release on a Monday, right? So I got it in between certain things. So I'll do a post on like a Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and maybe throw something out on a Sunday. So it's about 3 to 4 posts a week.
Okay, wow.
Right. My reflection on social media right now, there's a lot of stuff. You know what I mean?
Talk about the good and the bad that you see.
Oh, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now I'm warmed up. So social media is a tool.
Okay.
Right? It's a tool to build, but it's also a tool that you can go down a deep dive of a hole and get out of control, right? Too many times we want to compare ourselves to maybe that influencer, that individual. But what we have to know how to do is knowing that we are ourselves, right? So through self-development, when you're thinking about maybe it's that one person, could be Michael Jordan, could be Rafael Nadal, that you may inspire, understand that you have traits of those people inside of you.
Okay.
So always study that opposition and say, hey, if that's Michael, that's Rafael, what made them get to become great? Because they're no different than me and you. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And how would you find even that out of what kind of got them there? Like, would you
learn about their story, right? We all have a story, right?
And especially people that are as high up with that, like they might have videos on it or have been on a podcast. And I'm sure you could find different ways.
Have you watched The Last Dance?
No.
No? You should.
Okay.
You should watch
The Last Dance on?
Michael Jordan, the documentary, Chicago Bulls.
I've heard about it, but no, I've never watched it.
Man.
I'm like, I watch just reality and I'm just here, there, and everywhere. So I don't even have time to sit down and watch.
There's parts of that you understand, Michael.
Okay.
And you see why he held himself accountable and everybody else around him accountable.
Okay.
And that's a team sport.
But then you'd see some people that would watch that and try to do exactly what he's doing. Or like, at least some people will take things from it. But it is hard to not try to just know and watch something like a documentary and stuff like that and say, okay, I can take these things from someone, but I don't have to live the exact same life and be mad that I'm not getting those results as he's getting. And that's the thing,
but you got to think, you're dealing with guys that are like super successful from a money standpoint. But what did they use to get to leapfrog to where they're at? It's not necessarily about the money, but it's about the discipline that you build into it to get to where you need to get to.
Because you're never going to get to that point if you don't, make some sacrifices or put yourself in some positions that you don't want to 100%. Be in, or wake up that bit earlier or whatever and stuff. But if we're talking about like comparisons and stuff, me being a woman on social media, I feel like it's a lot of people that I've talked to feel the same way in the fact of like idealism, like you want to look that perfect person that's put out on social media. Do you find that too? Like, do you have any of those comparison ideals that like you go through, or that
you know what it is? I'll give you a little spoiler, a little tip. For me with podcasting, there's for other podcasters that are industry podcasts that I watch to understand their tonality. Right? So what that means for me is that I'll look at somebody like, say, for instance, Joe Budden, successful podcast that he has, and I see what has made him get from hip hop artist to podcaster. What did he have to do, right? Where did he learn is finding his range in talking into a mic? Because talking into a mic is not the easiest thing. So I rather should put myself around people or watch content that's going to help me build also. Yeah, you know give you mean?
That bit of a push too, because seeing someone else do it successfully, you're 100%. Gonna. But how did you even? Did you just wake up one morning and you're like, maybe I should just try?
You're asking you're asking that question. 2016, sat in the backyard. I looked into my MacBook Air. Okay. And I just said, hey, listen, a podcast is coming.
2016, like that's before podcasting was, I didn't listen to podcasts in 2016. I don't know if it was a huge thing. I don't know when it kind of blew up and stuff. I know everybody listens to podcasts now.
No, they do.
But was 2016, was it a huge thing too?
It was not a huge thing. Okay. I wanted to do something different. Okay. So I worked in the corporate world.
So you wanted to push yourself.
Yeah. So I worked at Apple.
Okay.
And I said, hey, listen.
You've done it all. You've done it all.
I've done some things.
You've been a personal trainer, life coach, podcaster. Now I know you worked at Apple. Holy crap, you can do it all.
No, I guess so, right? Jack of all trades. So I worked at Apple and I said, listen, I got to do something different. And I just opened up the computer, Sarah, and start talking, glass of water. And just went on a rant. Start doing
on like
all this,
a live or where?
This on a live, on pre-recorded.
Okay.
Pre-recorded. Then I released it and I saw the feedback. And
really?
Everybody was like,
that takes guts.
Overcoming adversity, right? That's the reason why we're here. So I said to myself, let's do the podcast. How's the world going to, receive it? So I came up with social injustice issues, episode 1.
Yeah.
So that was on the heels of Colin Kaepernick.
Okay.
Right? So when he was taking the knee, NFL.
Yeah.
And I got a lot of hate.
Really?
Yeah.
From what were they saying?
So where I used to work at the first gym, so since we're there.
We're going way back.
Yeah, way back. The owner looked at me and says, you shouldn't be talking about these issues.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's in 2016.
And why do you say that?
Because he says, being black from Canada, why are you speaking about somebody, an NFLer that's taking a knee that's only doing this for social media propaganda? And I said to myself, I go, really? But now if you go to 2020, George Floyd, we're in the streets, we're rallying, we're supporting that movement. Right?
And that's like not that long of time for people to fully change their perspectives and like come so far, right? So it's just crazy that like he could be saying that to you, but now look what's happening, look what's going on,
right?
Which is...
So, coming into that, those are the type of conversations I like to have, right? Conversations that
the conversations that need to be had.
Exactly, that move the needle, right? Because we can simply sit here and talk about the water bottle and, build content around that. You know what I mean? But you got the fashion unlocked, so it is what it is. Or we can talk about the Starbucks coffee, but that's not moving the needle. That's not pushing the agenda.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? I always say is, you push the agenda, don't let the agenda push you. You know what I mean?
And I have a lot of respect for you for that, because even me, like a reason why I started my podcast was to talk about the things that aren't talked about. When I went into content creation and stuff, and I'm sure you've maybe felt some of this too, but how? Like people are like, oh my God, okay, yes, she posts that collaborates with this person. I see you do collaborations too. It's like, well, how does that work? How did it happen? And I'm like, so many people don't know. And I'd get so many questions just about things, and like people think I'm this such confident person for posting, and I'm sure they do for you too, because you do it all the time. But it is hard to explain to someone like, okay, I still care too. Like I've come a long way. It's just, I've put myself out there even more. And just like you have, like you, even starting your podcast, and you do it all by yourself, like you go from start to finish. So I have so much respect for you, but it's just like, it is hard. And how did you like get that confidence to speak about these things and be okay with getting those hateful comments? And like people, obviously you're probably getting great comments too, but how do you deal with that? Like how did you overcome that?
Boundaries,
and not just stop?
Boundaries. So in podcasting, you talk about collaboration. You got to build rep to get the collaboration. Right? That's one.
Start from the bottom.
2, now when you're talking in this mic and you're thinking about what you want to say, you got to understand there's certain lines you can't blur. Because if you're on the mainstream, or you're far lefter, far right winger, all that good stuff.
Where would you classify yourself?
I feel like I'm mainstream now.
Okay.
I feel like I'm very, very mainstream. So I'm not ranting on the mic as much. And now I rant when it comes to self-development.
Why did you make that change then?
Just personal.
Okay.
It's personal. Because cancel culture is real, but it's also fake at the same time, right?
And I want to kind of touch on that too, because what are your opinions on cancel culture and
it's
stuff
fake.
like?
It's fake outrage.
Why do you say it's fake?
It's
what do you
fake
mean
outrage
by that?
Because it's a group of people trying to, what do I say here? Collect information to basically throw it out and be like, oh, I don't agree with what that person is talking about. So it could be like weight loss or keto or something like that. Use that as an example. Oh, that doesn't work for me, so why should those other people do it, type of thing. You know what I mean?
Which doesn't make any sense, because everything could work differently for other people.
Everybody has their own decisions. You just find, like when I talked about the social injustice issues coming out, that was a form of cancel culture, because I'm in the gym and then people are kind of like hesitant.
Yep, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I had a conversation on one of my podcasts about with an actress, and we talked about what was one of our most challenging roles that she had to act out.
Okay, interesting. That's
right?
a good question.
And she spoke about it, right? So she talked.
What did she say?
What's that?
What did she say?
So just she had to act out. I can't say it because like with whatever,
Yep,
use your imagination, right? And it was a very uncomfortable feeling for her.
Yes.
And a person that I was involved with decided to come at me and says, "Why are you laughing about a woman's misfortune and things like that?"
Okay.
When it was never like that. Because if you listen back to the episode, I was so uncomfortable, right? And it was so surreal because it was a remote podcast, and I'm like, okay. And I didn't laugh. It was that nervous laugh.
Yes, which happens.
And a bunch of people at work, I had them listen to the episode. What do you guys feel of this? And they said, you didn't do anything wrong. You're vulnerable.
That's a good way of putting it.
When people have their own preconceived notions, that's when they'll come for you. When you're building through success, that's when they'll come for you.
And some people are almost looking for that too. Like they're trying to find that weak point to kind of pick at and like pull at and stuff. And even in like going back to just comments on stuff, you said that you got some hate comments on other episodes too. And it's like, you have to step back. And I'm glad that you even asked other people too for their perspectives, because sometimes they'll even give you, and you're like, I don't know what I did wrong, but they'll be like, no, I can see that. I know who you are, and I can see that this is why that laugh came out. And they're talking about vulnerability, and it's like probably gave you a bit of like, okay.
Because so I'll be honest, some people want to tone police us. Okay. When it comes to podcasting, right? Because we may say something that doesn't agree with the mainstream per se, and then people are like, well, Rory and Sarah said this, so let's shun them. And it's like, we have to have more conscious conversations in this world. Men and women.
I feel like sometimes because of the whole cancel culture and stuff, people are even more scared to do things like be on a podcast or this and that. Because even for me, I was like just watching before things got posted. Of course, I would watch the episode and like listen to it just in case I wanted something to be taken out or whatever, right? But it is like, because it's such a big thing, it's in the back of your head when you're doing these podcasts or whatever. I know who I am, and I'm so confident in what I'm saying and my opinions and stuff. But because it's so big right now and stuff, it is at the back of my head at least, right? And it's like, is it gonna be like this forever? Is it gonna get worse, or is it gonna stay like? Where do you see that going?
So when it comes down to cancel culture, or when it comes down to what we're talking about on the podcast?
Cancel culture.
It's a good question, because it's still happening. Use somebody like, for instance, Donald Trump. Okay. People still want to cancel him because of everything that's going on. But then there's other people that are saying 2024, presidency and things like that. Russia and Ukraine, form of cancel. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of things that are not being talked about that should be talked about. But because of the content that we're talking about, I can't really say, because censorship views and all that other crazy stuff. So you got to be very mindful about how you do certain things.
Mindful is a huge thing that you have to be, especially if you're hosting a podcast or doing these things or being so public with your life.
So it's for the audience that are listening to this point. I'm dancing around it because just to protect your brand. You know what I mean? Because it's not like copyright strikes or things like that, or you get flagged for certain things that you say, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's always, as you say, the back of the mind. Being aware of the context. People can put two and two together. Absolutely. Get on your Googles. Get on your phone. Figure it out. You know what I mean? So I feel like things can change, but let's say this. When you're in the YouTube space, there's a world that you can work in, right? Versus
I'm not in there, so you have to explain a bit more.
You have your content on YouTube. Don't do this.
Yes, but like don't do any more than posting my podcasts on YouTube.
Sure. When you get and you grow, you're going to see what I'm talking about, right? So there's certain things you have to stay within parameters, right? So when you stay in the parameters, you're okay. When you don't
parameters, as in like rules that you have to stay by YouTube or by the audience and stuff?
By the audience and YouTube. Okay. So if you color outside of the lines, that's when people are going to start coming for you.
But I feel like that's in any social media or anywhere in life too.
Yes and no. So you have to be able to know how to weigh both sides. Be a contrarian when you're on a podcast. Okay. Depending on the subject content that you're talking about, right? So if you're having conscious conversations, you got to be able to weigh both points. When you have the skill set to weigh both points, that's when people can't say anything.
And that takes talent too, to be able to do that and put yourself in both of those shoes at 100%. The same time, almost. And with life coaching and stuff, do you find like that you've given advice that you weren't too sure about or thought back on and stuff too?
No, because I come straight from the heart, right? And I say tough love. I'll throw a book at you. And it's like, hey, like, listen, I'm not throwing the book to hit you in the head with it, but I'm going to toss the book, figure it out. Because I'm not going to dance around when I'm having a conversation with you. If you want to know how to get out of a rut, some people need to have more tough love.
And you are very confident in everything that you say to your...
Absolutely, 100%.
How did you even get into, like, how does someone get into life coaching? Is there a course? Is there...
So my mentor, right, for when I was working out, losing weight, at one point in time, I was like, what, 290, almost 320 pounds.
Good for you.
In my early years, right? And I stumbled upon Dr. Eric Thomas, ET hip hop preacher. And I ripped all of his videos from YouTube, right? Put him on my MP3 on my phone. And I started listening to his content when I was in the gym. And he's been leading me throughout this journey. And I said to myself, look, it's time for me to make a change. And then when 2020 happened with the COVID, I said, hey, look, life coach. I watched his webinar. I said, hey, listen, boom, pay the money. There was 3 tiers. So there's 2K, 5K, and there's 15K. I would have loved to do the 15K. If the money's there, it is what it is. But at that point in time of life, am I really going to do that? So I paid the 2K online, 7 o'clock in the morning. He's on the West Coast. This man shows up on, was it Zoom he showed up on? And I'm looking and I'm like, wow, this is so surreal that your hero, your mentor is right on a Zoom call.
And was it a one-on-one with you and him?
It wasn't a one-on-one. It was a group setting. It was like about 10 people. Right? So it was pretty small, pretty intimate. And he asked questions, right? And then you just go through the certification, learn some stuff, develop. I'm a big avid reader, things like that. So you add to your repertoire. You build into the reps.
Wow. And then after that, how did you become to get clients and all that stuff?
Just market yourself. Social media. I was using Clubhouse a lot of the time. Right, but now
that used to be a huge thing. Yeah,
it's still.
I think during the pandemic and stuff,
it's still there, but it's so funny.
I think I deleted off my phone now, but
you were never on Clubhouse, were you?
I was. What? I think it was like during the pandemic and stuff. Like my friends would jump on there and stuff too. So it was like a fun little thing, but I never took it any more serious than that.
Should have. It's a good way to build your channels.
But how?
Oh, well, like, you can't build it now because it's this audio app that you have to be very open with.
Yeah.
Right?
Put yourself in with anybody.
People can fake the funk on that app.
What do you mean by that?
Oh, they were faking. So many people, scam artists, all these influencers coming in. I'm a coach of this. I'm a coach of that. When you look at them and you market yourself, you're like, you're not who you say you are.
Yeah.
Right? And there's a lot of, what I loved about social audio is that there's a grounding. But people have to go to your Instagram to find out who is the real you. So whatever you're saying on that social audio app, they can go back to your Instagram. They can go to your LinkedIn. People are punching in your name to figure out who's this person.
And why am I, is this real? Why am I having this conversation? Am I going to benefit or not benefit from this? Because you never really know. But talking about that, but you've come so far. You're saying that, I think you said during the pandemic, which is what, 2 years ago now, is when you made a huge transition in your life. What are your next goals then? Because you're thriving right now in my eyes. So,
well, I say I'm next. I'm next in this space. Podcasting, I feel like Canada doesn't get a lot of respect.
Oh, absolutely not.
Right.
No.
2019, the sports world was flipped upside down when the Toronto Raptors won the championship.
Yeah.
So it opened up more exposure.
Absolutely.
For basketball.
I totally agree. Yeah.
But there's some talented individuals here in Canada that I think the surrounding world is starting to recognize.
Yeah.
It's not only Drake and Bieber. There's some diamonds in the rough out here. I believe
that it's harder for them to.
Yeah. I believe I'm next in such a place because I can be the next big time podcaster to come out of Canada. And some people are like, oh, this guy's got an ego. No, it's confident. Because I look at the plethora of people that I've lined up in front of me, that I've collected all the information that I needed. So I've built myself a credible brand that's going to springboard when the time is going to happen to get me to that next level. So I can be sitting in those places with the names that I've said on this podcast, right? And I always say this, a lot of people don't understand is that what we do, we don't necessarily have a degree for in podcasting.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it can start getting you into places that degrees you don't necessarily need.
And do you like that? Do because you went to Western.
No.
Do you have a university degree?
Computer programming.
Computer programming.
Yeah, you would say something else
really?
there. Commuter.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
But I don't know why I thought you went to Western.
Mm-mm.
Interesting.
I have Western connections.
Yeah, and I guess probably just because you live in London that
Absolutely.
I probably thought. But wow, crazy. But you're so confident. Of course, you even know that yourself. Do you ever get like nervous and stuff for doing different podcasts and like having people on?
Well, let's look at it here. I'm out my element right now.
What do you mean by that?
Because sitting across a table from somebody else, it's a little nerve wracking. I'll be honest.
Absolutely. I get
because
nervous
I'm
before
out
every
my
one.
element. So what this is telling me is that you're now graduated from remote recording.
Yeah.
First, I used to, like, if I tell you the whole history of like how I used to record the podcast, you'd be like, really? That's what you did? Like I was using a phone and Bluetooth speaker and just positioning it back to the mic. That's how a lot of my episodes were going, right?
Okay.
And then I went from Zoom to Riverside FM. So now I'm sitting in places now where it's human. So
and how much better is it when it's
better,
you're face to face?
But it's here. How do I say this? It's a little bit nerve wracking because you have to like know your pitching and your tones and stuff like that.
Yeah. And so what makes it different than being like virtual and
because you're comfortable. I can
really?
sit behind.
I think the opposite. When
Really?
when I was doing it over Zoom, because I don't have that person in front of me, and I'm such a talker. I honestly just love to hear my own voice sometimes too. But it's like so much more comforting knowing that you're here. We're having a conversation. It's I don't know, something about just being on Zoom or like virtual. It's just doesn't hit the same with comfort and
different.
stuff.
You can do a lot. You can do a lot because the person's not in the room with you. So now I'm overcoming it as I go, right? So it takes me some time to get.
You just got to do it. Push yourself. Keep doing it. The more you do it, the better.
Here's the life
more
coach
comfortable.
once again telling Rory what to do. Wow.
No, because I learned a lot when you were speaking about it, like and stuff. In our last podcast, which we did a podcast on his channel, go check it out. But you're so positive, and I love that because I try to eat, sleep, breathe positivity because life is so short. Why spend a day and I get it, you're going to go through things and stuff, but at the end of the day, you have one life, live it. Think of everything glass half full because there's so much bad in the world, but there's also so much good and you have to grab it.
I want to flush that out. You said, think everything with the glass half full.
Glass half full.
Why not the glass empty?
Because everything, like you want to be that type of person. You want to live that good life. So why would you think of something with a glass half empty rather than half full?
Have the glass empty. Because when the glass is empty, you can pour to fill it up to where you see it. Okay,
that's a different way of thinking about it. But in my way, I'm like, okay, glass half full. It's half full.
Yeah. But then you can't add really much to the cup. You can only add maybe
we can overflow the cup.
Right, really? Then you got to clean up the mess.
That's fine.
Then you got spillage.
But we just
then
know
you got to get the paper towel or the shop vac to figure it out.
But either way, if you think of it empty and you can fill it up full, or if you think of it half full, it's just a good way of thinking of life and looking at it in a positive perspective. That's what I think, gets me through everything. So what's your kind of take on life and how do you stay so positive?
Eliminating distractions. I know it's easier said than done.
What kind of distractions do you try to eliminate?
This toxic people, toxic energy. I always say is this, when my head is down and I'm focused, right? If I'm at work or I'm focusing on my craft or I'm focusing on the coaching, another coaching program's out, podcast coaching, you know what I mean? Check it out, all that good stuff. You have people around you that see what it is you're doing and what they try to do. Could be family, could be friends, and they're not in the right mindset. So they come to you for Q&A. Okay. So if they come to you for Q&A, it's because they look at you as a person that has an authority into whatever they have going on in their life. Okay. Right? So I'm leading you in a story here. So what that means is that if they trust you, they're going to come to you. But if you trust me, you're going to listen, apply. Like I said at the beginning, don't sit in your mess. And too many times we want to sit in our mess because maybe we have people that don't want to check us and hold us accountable because we maybe never been around it. We maybe never experienced it. Absolutely. So when somebody holds you accountable, you're not used to it. What are you going to tend to do? Just keep doing what you're doing and not make those changes. Now, what does that lead to? Insanity. Failure, not insanity. Not growing. That's for sure. Right? Because you keep doing the same thing over and over again, it leads to insanity. And I totally agree with that. Like even the people that you surround yourself with, you need to know what friends will just say yes to say yes and benefits
the both of you are like having that good moment or day, but there are some friends that you have to realize of who to go to and when, because I have a few people in my life, best friends, that I'm like, okay, no, like I will sit here and listen exactly. I don't have to act upon what you're saying or do exactly what you're telling me to do, but everything that you're saying, I'm hearing, I'm analyzing, I'm listening, and I'm taking from it. And because there's some things that you don't see that you're going through, and there's some people in your life that you probably tell more to and know more about you than maybe you even know about yourself, and you really just got to listen and take from that, because there's so many people in probably everybody's life that are just going to be your yes men, and it might not be for a great reason, and it might be just to benefit them or benefit the moment.
So you just said something about the yes men, and that's the thing. A lot of people are enabled with the people that they have in their inner circle. You need to have at least one person to tell you what you're doing something wrong.
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
how you're going to grow. And when you're enabled, you're never going to want to grow.
Yeah.
Right? So that's just how life is.
So what's the worst advice you'd ever been given then?
Worst advice?
Worst advice.
I talk with my hands in podcasting. So when I was on, when I was doing remote, like a lot more remote podcasts, I'm talking with my hands. So this one particular guy that works in showbiz says you talk with your hands so much, but I'm like really?
Too much?
He's like, you talk with your hands. You're always talking with your hands. Put your hands on the table. Don't be so outspoken.
Okay.
And so I'm listening to this and I'm like,
who cares?
Who cares?
Yeah, literally.
I'm gonna keep doing me. I'm gonna keep doing what it is I'm doing. If that's the worst
thing that's happening during the podcast, I think
because
I'm okay.
Last time I checked, I've been talking with my hands. I've been saying what I wanted to say. I've been, straight to the point. I'm still building. I'm still growing.
And in my opinion, using your hands and like being like this is more so inviting for the conversation, because you're more involved and you care more than just rather sitting here and just being like, yep.
Yeah, nodding your head.
Yeah,
you know
and not
really
listening.
Sitting on my hands, like what is that?
Not actually like hearing what the other person has to say or engaged in the conversation.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure that's just some people do and some people don't. So, so what's the best then? I'll switch it off.
Best advice?
Best advice you've ever gotten.
I hear it since grade 8, so I'll give you a little bit of a spoiler.
Okay.
I always say spoiler. My principal when I was playing grade 8 basketball always looked at me and says, you have a voice. Okay. You know a lot. Leading through the years, I've always you have that radio voice. You have that radio voice.
You do have a very big, like, calming
voice. Last time I
voice.
checked, we're April 16th, 2022. And I feel like I'm in what people have been talking about all through my years of life. So I'm here, I'm podcasting.
And you tapped into that voice.
Tapped into it, right?
Yep.
They say the voice can make you money, right? So we'll see what happens.
Oh, it can, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you even carry out, like, how do you make sure that your audience and stuff on Instagram and stuff, because I know it's not verbal, like you can't, I guess you go on live and stuff, but you can't speak as much as you do on podcasting. How do you make sure that you're kind of like sticking to your values and your perspective and your words
through the posts that I make,
Instagram?
The posts that are not the audio posts, the ones that they can read, where it's a picture and it's maybe tips to do this or tips to do that, or give a little bit of a testimonial just on life and how you should achieve and perceive and go through,
And what's your like content that does the best?
Like podcasting?
Anything. It could be your Instagram, this, that.
I would say the podcasting though. Because the numbers are spiking, and wherever it's coming from, I don't know, and I'm not questioning it. Yeah. So I'm not a big metrics guy, but when it comes to certain things, you got to look at the metrics. So when you start seeing your things in the green and it's like 200 plus, 300 plus, 400 plus, where is this coming from? Because when you have all your social media channels, and that's a whole topic for another day, but when you have all these social media channels, you got to understand where all your traffic is coming from. So here's a tip. Google search, possibly LinkedIn.
You think that's where people are coming from? Do you post your podcast and everything on LinkedIn as well?
Yes.
Okay, smart. I should start doing that.
You should.
That's a good one. Because it really is like people will look into who you are. It's an
untapped market. I was having a conversation the other night about that. It's an untapped market that a lot of people don't understand. So people are pivoting to that. I think Facebook is finished right now until Meta comes out.
I don't even open the app anymore.
Right?
I have it, but right? I don't even
Instagram has its highs and lows. People now are starting to put pictures and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I feel like it was, and then it went on the decline, and now it's coming back up. That's just my take on it right now. But like, even if I'm working for people or doing this and that, I always check, or even reaching out to people, I check their LinkedIn, because it's like, okay, what have you done? Where have you been? What are you doing? And then you can find out everything. Obviously, Instagram, you can see what they're doing on the day-to-day, but that's where like it's actually like, okay, work, professions, what are you doing, what have you been doing for the past 10 years of your life? And it's you can really find out anything online.
Absolutely.
It's amazing, but it's also like a little scary because everything you've probably ever done you can't get away from.
Well, that's why you got to be careful what you put on social media, or it comes back and gets you. So there's been some episodes back long time ago.
Okay. On your channel?
Oh yeah, on the podcast that I've called out a lot of different people.
Okay.
Well, guess what?
Has anything come back?
No, I won't. Can't do that.
Really?
Off-topic conversation. Okay. You got to make sure you tie your things up correctly.
Yeah. True.
Yes.
Have you ever gotten any like someone being mad at you because of something that you said like on social media? Or
friends.
Just friends?
Yeah.
No guests that have been
you know
like...
what, I'll say it. I'm not going to hold this back.
Please say it.
One of my friends felt that I was talking about him a lot on a few episodes.
Okay.
Because of just what was going on.
In the world.
Just relationships and friends. And he's like, called me. He's like, why are you talking about me?
Really?
He goes, why are you talking about me? He goes, I know you do.
Was it in like a negative sort of way?
I said it in a way where it was respectful.
Did you say his name or was it just like in general?
Never say names.
Okay.
Come on, you gotta learn from Drake.
Smart.
Be like Drake. Drake don't say names on him.
Gosh,
you know what I mean?
no.
When he does his diss tracks. So I said what I needed to say, and it brought a conversation.
Okay.
And he goes, I know that you talk about things in your podcast, but he goes, why do you do that? And I go, well, did you take it to the heart? It's like, if it shoe fits, you got to wear it, right? And this is the thing.
That'd be hard to hear.
Right? But we're good now. We figured it out. So it's like, people got to just stop being so sensitive. If you have a friend that's doing a podcast and they're talking about whatever, and maybe they use a reference point, don't be sensitive about it. Because it's what we do. Like, you think these athletes, when they have their friends that are in the press box or analysts are saying whatever they say and say, hey, listen, you had a crap game or a shit game and stuff like that, you think they call up the person and be like, yo, why'd you have to say that?
Yeah.
It's part of the line of work.
True.
Figure it out.
I haven't really thought about it like that. I mean, you just basically said you talked about a relationship. I remember on our podcast, you said you've had a lot of conversations with people about relationships.
Oh, that's where you want to go now?
Yeah, I kind of do. I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about it since like we've had our podcast, and I want to know what your biggest thing you've kind of learned from relationships or your perspective of like what you need to do.
That people are no good. People are no good.
So I'm assuming after that comment, you're single. If you're, that's just what I'm getting from it.
Listen, this where we cut the podcast. No, my relationship status I'll never speak about on a podcast until we have hardware involved.
What does that mean?
It means a ring.
Okay.
When the ring is there.
True.
Right?
Okay. Valid.
Because relationships can always end.
So you wouldn't be the person to post pictures with your significant other?
You don't need to do that.
You don't need to do that?
Especially in the digital age right now.
Okay, so this is where I disagree. Because if I was in a relationship and my significant other didn't post me, I'd be offended.
Why?
Because I'd be like, come on, show me off.
Why are you doing it for the vanity metrics?
I'm not, but it's just part of life.
How's it part of life?
Because I don't know. I just feel
what
like.
What happens if that relationship ends? Then you got to pull everything down.
That's okay.
And you had a podcast and you were talking about your lovey-dovey and all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then what happens?
But you're not dating to end. You're not thinking of that while you're doing it, right? That's just my perspective.
Listen, this is Act 2 that we're doing. Act 3 is gonna be the one.
Okay, we won't get too into it, but I need to know your just kind of perspective on relationships in general. Like what's the biggest thing that you have to keep in mind?
Relationships go back to the original question. You said, what do I think about people in relationships? Everybody has an agenda. So you have to find the right person that's going to supplement you and you supplement them. Build together, like I said on the podcast.
Absolutely.
Not drifting apart. If you have somebody that's, say, big in a world of just 1% or high earner, 150K, and maybe you make 50K, that's okay. It shouldn't be about vanity and money per se, but at least do your thing to hold up your end of the bargain.
Yeah.
We spoke about if we're creating or entrepreneurs, have somebody that's going to be able to be a tag team partner with you.
And push you.
Too many times when you're growing one way, the other person is going to drift off. Or they make it bigger than them. They make the brand bigger than them. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
So relationships is got to be about a collaboration, right? How are you going to help each other build?
Absolutely.
Right? Because if I go this way, I'm going to go that way with you. If I go this way, I'm going to go that way with you, or you're going to go that way with me.
Yeah.
Be with the person for their wins and their losses through life and through death.
Be ready to pick them up, or
there you go. Not too much of the selfish antics and things like that.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's hard, like, especially, I don't forget what podcast it was, but I was listening to a podcast and someone was like, you can't get into a relationship until you're ready to give your all for them and to them. And I was thinking about it and I'm like, I haven't thought about it like that, because I think the way I think of relationships is more so like when you meet the right person, you'll know and it'll fit in your life, and you need to be happy 9 out of the 10 days that you see them. If something could go wrong, you could get in a little argument. That happens with any relationship in your life. But if the 9 out of 10 aren't good and you're leaving on a great feeling about how of a great time you've had with them, it's not worth it. But hearing this from someone on the podcast, I was like, so true. Like, nobody should, I think so many times people get into relationships because it's this great person and they're loving it for that moment, but they're just not ready at that point to give that 100%, but they'll do it anyways for this person. But I think you really have to sit down with yourself and think, like, am I ready to give everything to this person?
Why are you single then? Let's just go there. Why are you single then? Let's go. Hurry up. Scurry for the answer.
I'm just not exactly ready to be in another relationship. I have big things coming in my life.
What does that mean?
I have master's program in a different country.
I know you keep talking about the master's program.
Because I'm so excited.
Can you brand that? Can you put that somewhere so you can brand that?
I should. No, but I do, and like it doesn't just mean I could be going to a job, but I'm leaving, and I want to 100% focus on this, and I want to give the next years of my life my all. I'm just graduating my university right now, and that was a huge thing. Like, I am so driven in what I do and my work and everything that I think, like, I'm pretty young. Like, I have my life ahead of me.
You know what's so crazy? I hear a mind of like a 30-plus-year-old.
Me?
Yes, but you're like 22, 23?
Around there. We'll leave it like that.
Okay. What are you, 19?
No. No, I'm not.
So why don't you tell people your age? I know I'm older
22.
than you. I'm older than you.
Yeah. But if you had to guess, how old do you think I was?
Honestly?
Yeah.
So you asked me a question on the podcast where you were like, what are people's assumptions?
Okay.
When you look at you, you see young, but when you speak, you sound old.
Okay. So you said.
So you carry yourself very mature.
Thank you.
So I would have put you 28 tops.
Okay.
A lot of women in your caliber that talk like you, that look like you, older. Demons older. It's not like, oh my God.
I feel like that's a huge compliment, because you want to, and I feel like carrying yourself in a sort of way of, at least for me, because I know who I am, maybe that's why I sound a bit older, and I know what I stand for, and I know my perspectives and stuff, and I'm totally standing by it. Maybe that's why I do sound a little bit older, but I'll take the compliment.
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm going to boost you here even on the podcast even more. So one of my coworkers saw a lot of your content, and she reached out to me and she was like, yo, Sarah, such and such and such and such and such. I can see why she's this person, but she's actually such a confident individual. I'd love to get to know her.
Oh, nice.
Right?
Well,
so
send
you're
her
out
my
here
info.
inspiring and changing lives.
That's all I want to do. I just want to make everyone's day a little bit more positive and put them in a little bit better of a direction.
But the whole posting the person on the social media, when the bigger the bigger you go, and you bring that person into that position,
and you see so many people that hide that.
It can put a hinder on the relationship because you're now bringing them into your world, right?
Yep.
And it's not because you're hiding them. It's because you got to protect the nest. You got to protect the home.
But it is, I think, a lot of people in their minds probably like they feel like they're being hidden from somebody if they're not been posting them.
No, it's not being hidden, because you know what it is. At the end of the day, it's like, hey, you know what? I could go out to Vegas and party it up, do whatever, have a ring on my finger. That doesn't mean that I'm not loyal to you. It does not mean I'm not committed to you.
I agree, but it's just like, first, at least for me, I'm like, okay, but if someone goes onto my profile, and most people will check, like even if, you know, I meet someone and I'm like, okay, just follow them the next day. And if you don't see pictures with a girlfriend, you would generally think, okay, anymore. There's nobody.
Listen, you can have a girlfriend, you can have a boyfriend, you could be lesbian, you could be gay, whatever. People are going to look at you on social media and they're still going to shoot their shot like Steph Curry from 40 feet.
I mean, yeah, most people, but I wouldn't shoot my shot with someone that if I knew they had, you know, and if I saw
We're
pictures
not saying
with.
that though. We're not saying that, but other people that perceive us, they're still going to shoot their shot.
Yeah, I get what you're saying for sure. Okay, I know we're running out of time, so I need some things that you want to give the guest as takeaways, or like might push them in a better of a direction, more positive, more confident. Give them share some light on how you became confident, so that maybe they could take it into their daily life.
Cut off the Netflix.
Really?
I'm going to say that. Yeah, cut off the Netflix.
As in, like, just less?
Netflix should be a tool for the weekends.
Okay.
You have 7 days in the week. Saturday and Sunday are your weekends. Mm-hmm. Monday to Friday, focus on your goals. Mm-hmm. Right? Now, that's my opinion and my perspective. I know people are going to be like, I can't cut off the Netflix. Yes, you can. Mm-hmm. If you want to get to where you want to get to, that could be in your school. That could be getting, high 80s, 90s, maybe getting that top CEO job. Mm-hmm. You have to eliminate the distractions, Absolutely. Which I call minimum wage activities that are not going to help produce you to have growth, mm-hmm. right? Now, that's step one. Step two, survey the land about who you have around you.
Okay.
Who's pulling you down? Who's building you up?
Absolutely.
Right?
I totally back that.
That's two. And three, just consistency. Mm-hmm. Be consistent. If you go to the gym, be consistent. If you're going to do 20 push-ups by summer, guess what? 1 push-up a day, keeps Literally. The haters away.
Consistency is huge, even for social media. If you want to get anywhere, like your podcast, you've been doing it for so long, you've been consistent. You post, you say 3 times a week with this and that on social media, and it's like, that is consistency, and you're not going to get anywhere if you're not being consistent. And that's obviously, I'm talking about social media, but reaching out to friends and family and this and that, like, you have to be consistent, or else.
You know what I love about what we do? We're always closing. What that means is, with speech, we can always recite back what the person's saying, and we're always closing. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So hats off to you, because like I said, I feel the energy with you, and I know that you're gonna take this thing to the next level.
Let's hope.
I feel like
you're already taking it to the next level, so I'm just.
We'll see what happens.
But I'm sure we'll.
Act 3's coming.
Yeah,
don't worry.
There will be, and maybe more about relationships, because we had a lot to say.
Oh, there's going to be a panel conversation.
Oh, great.
There's going to be many mics.
So stay tuned for that. But thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you all took something from this episode. And thank you, Rory, for joining our podcast. I did want to mention again that we do have another episode on your podcast. So please go check that out. And make sure to write any future questions or topics you want to hear about. Maybe another one with Rory. We'll see. But Please follow the good, the bad, and the future on Instagram. See you next one.